Previously on Dreaming Tabitha, we had an artist showcasing her chibis and then some, and also showing the equipment that she uses to create these chibis, along with a pencil that she has no idea why she uses this particular brand. Also, there were some amazing stenciling processes, as well as the sketching of an individual character. But what will be next on Dreaming Tabitha? Just kidding, guys. Last time we talked about how I go through my process of creating my chibis. And this episode, I just wanted to show you how you can take your artwork from this to this. And it simply requires coloring pencils. Yes, the magic that unfolds of coloring pencils. So I used to color my chibis first with coloring pencils, and then I would go in with markers because I was a lot more familiar with coloring pencils than I was with markers. So I was nervous. I felt like the recovery was a lot easier using the coloring pencils than with the markers. And that might be true, but it doesn't work properly. The marker ink kind of gets caught up in the coloring pencil fibers, so it doesn't work as good. So I have now learned to trust the process of coloring pencils last. The important thing to do before you start using your coloring pencils is to make sure that you swatch them first on the side like I do, because not all coloring pencils accurately display the color that's on the inside. So you want to double check and make sure of that. So I swatch them on the side, and then I just pretty much make sure that the coloring pencils are sharpened first. This will help with the blending and getting into the nooks and the crannies of everything. And then I go around really the entire face. I usually start off to the side in a corner of the head that doesn't necessarily require a lot of detail and that people don't necessarily look to right away. They never want to start somewhere that everybody's going to look at immediately. And then I just lightly press and go around the face. Now, what's really important is that you want to make sure that you are going in circles, my friends. When you're using your coloring pencils, don't go up and down. Don't go in an angle. You want to make sure you're doing circles. Say it with me. Circles. So this process takes forever because you're literally going over all of the skin that's there. And this is going to be the same process for everything as well. And Crayola has a really awesome coloring palette where they have a bunch of skin tones that you can work with. And I really like that because it gives you a nice wide variety. You give lighter colors, like this was very light almond that goes all the way to extremely dark or deep almond. So get a nice variety. The only problem is that Crayola, they're not the most efficient coloring pencils, so you have to definitely be delicate with the pressing onto the paper because they're not really creamy like Prismacolor pencils or Faber-Castells. But I just work my way up the process. Again, just going over the face, smoothing out any of the edges and making it a nice blend. It might not really look like you're making a lot of progress, but trust me, at this point, it makes a huge difference. You want to do this. As I start layering, I make sure that I start focusing more on the shadowed areas, layer upon layer, and then I'm just going to work up the scale of the color palette that I have until I get to my darker colors. So the overall secret is to really pay attention to your highlights and your shadows whenever you're coloring. Look where your light source is coming from, and then depending on how dark you make the shadows is how contrasted the image is and can really enhance it depending on what kind of style you're going for. Are you going for like this aggressive anime style, or are you just going for a nice soft pastel color palette? Now, when I start using the darker colors, I again make sure that I swatch first, and then I even carefully decide where I'm going to place it on my image. So typically the inside of our ear, because it's really heavily shadowed, that's the place that I start first. So I know what it actually looks like compared to the rest of my colors. Like, how dark is this suddenly going to become? And then I just work again in my shadows. You'll notice it's going to be a boring and reoccurring theme is start in the shadows. Now, one tool that people might not ever tell you about when using coloring pencils to keep on handy is a fan brush. Unfortunately, coloring pencils have a habit of leaving behind little bits, and so you don't want to use your hands, especially with the dark colors, because it's going to start messing with your paper and leaving streaks behind. So having a fan brush on hand will just gently sweep that away without leaving any tracks. So once again, say it with me now, we're going over the shadows. We're going over the shadows. That's just gonna be the process. I know it's a really slow, boring process, but it makes a difference at the end, trust me. Now, the other thing is too, when I start working with my shadows, I make sure that I keep the original color that I had handy, right? The lightest color, because I'll use this to then soften the edges of wherever I have my shadows. Now, because Crayola coloring pencils, again, are not the creamiest and the smoothest, I sometimes will transition over to my Prismacolor pencils, the closest match that I have, and that will help smooth out the edges. When I get the skin where I like it to be, I go over with a white coloring pencil just to enhance and again smooth out any of the areas that are not nicely blended. And then it's just going to be the same process for the accessories and the clothing. Also, what's really important is to make sure that you focus a lot of details on the eyes. Simply by taking just a little bit of gray in the corners of the eyeballs and then smoothing them out and getting brighter as you get closer to the iris makes a big difference, as you can see here. And last but not least, I'm going in for the hair, and I'm actually working backwards with the hair this time. So instead of starting off with a lighter color, I'm actually starting off with a darker color. Is this the way you should do it? I don't know. It's just the process that works for me. Everybody's different, everybody's going to find their own way, but this is what works for me because a lot of the hair is already really dark and I just kind of work backwards. I seem to always do that with the hair whenever I'm coloring, so you'll find whatever way works best for you. Just showing you what I do. Hey, I'm not perfect at all this. I'm just like you guys. I am learning and growing along like the rest of us, so hey. But if you have any other methods that you use for enhancing your own artwork with markers and coloring pencils, hey, please let me know. I would love to grow and get better at this for sure. I'm already proud of the work that I've been able to do and the steps that I've already learned. I'm really impressed with this method. Now, hair can be a little tricky, especially when you have these wild and crazy hairdos. So that's why it's always important to have a reference photo for yourself, because it can get a little tricky, especially because they're not necessarily always more realistic looking hairdos when you have these types of characters. So like I said, keep a reference photo nearby and then just play around with the hair. I wasn't super happy with it at first. I liked the colors, but I felt like a lot of my placement was a little off. And to this day, I still think it's a little bit off from reality, but I'm not mad about it because again, it's a chibi. You can get away with a lot because everything's kind of exaggerated anyway. By the way, prints of this character will be available soon on my Etsy account. Be sure to peruse the shop while you're over there. And thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I show you how I enhance my chibis using coloring pencils. It just takes a lot of time, a lot of practice, but you can see that it definitely pays off if I show you the before and the after. I think we like. Last but not least, I do like to take a little bit of paint in this pen that I found and just add some really bright, sharp highlights. Just again, emphasizes everything. But what do you guys think? Thanks everybody for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like this video if you did and subscribe if you are new here. And of course, ring the notification bell if you want to get notified of all of my upcoming videos. Let me know if you want some more chibi tutorials. I might just do that. Be sure to check out my socials. Links are all in the description box down below. Catch you later.